Hi guys, so in this video I want to make something super fun, maybe on the simplistic side, but at the same time let's take an asset and run it all the way from zBrush to Substance Painter and then maybe bring it into Maya and see what it's looking like. So I want to create an alien planet, but something maybe unusual, something stylized, maybe a little cartoony. Maybe later in some other tutorials we can stick some spaceships and little aliens on it or something like that. But anyways, let's just jump right in and have fun. All right, so here I am in ZBrush, and to get started, the first thing I'm going to do is just go to Lightbox and grab this Dynamax 128. Once you have that, let's just mess this up just a little bit so it doesn't look so perfectly symmetrical. So I'm just going to grab my Move tool and maybe just make it a little more irregular so it doesn't it doesn't look like a perfect bowl. Even something like this will work. One thing I want to point out from the very beginning is that we're not interested in sculpting any detail. So the reason for that is because in Substance Painter we're just going to simply apply pre-made materials that will give us the richness of all the detail and all the depth and all that stuff. So all we need to do is just literally create really super basic clean geometry. And once again, we are creating something that could be used as a game asset as well. So let's make it low poly, right? All right, so once you have your sphere, next thing we should do is let's create some kind of a shell, right? So to do this, what I'm going to do is we can leave this on 128. Oh, let's just pump this up just a little bit higher. I'm going to go to 200. And I'm watching my active points here. If I drag and redynamesh, I'm at about 108,000. So that's what I'm working with. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make holding the S key, I can control the size of my brush. So I'm going to make it relatively small. And I don't have my active symmetry on because I do want to make it look a little more organic and not symmetrical. And holding down the control key, I'm just going to simply start carving out kind of little, almost like little islands on this planet. So it doesn't need to be anything specific. Just go around and holding down the control key, just make something along these lines. And I think the more organic it is, the better it's going to look. So make sure you don't do perfect circles or anything that might look, not natural, especially when it comes to something like a rock or asteroid, right, of some sort. So let's just go around and just do this. So something along these lines I think is pretty good. Another thing we can do is in certain parts we could make our brush even smaller, and holding down Control and Alt key we can even make little cutouts that have additional holes in there. Alright, so let's just go all the way around and create something like this. If you wanted to add to a mask, just hold down the Control key and just make, additional masking. Okay. So once you're done and you have something interesting, right? Maybe something along these lines. Maybe do a little. We can change the size and make them even smaller, of course, and just mess this up a little bit so it looks a little random. Okay. All right, very cool. So now we have something like this. So what would be the next step? The next step we should do is let's extract this mass geometry from the sphere, right? To do this, I'm going to go to my subtools. I'm going to go to extract, and I'm going to dial up my smoothness all the way up. And let's set our thickness to something like 0.1. And let's click extract to preview. So this is what we're left with. And you just have to decide if you like this thickness or you want it a little thicker. I think for this example, this is pretty much perfect. I'm going to say accept. Once I pressed accept, you can see right away a new layer was added. So now I can hide my planet and I'm left with something like this. which is really cool. If I hold on Control and drag, I can of course hide my mask, and now take a closer look. This is really interesting. Another thing I could do is I can select the layer with the sphere, and if I hide the outer shell, I can do the same thing. I can do Control and drag to remove the mask and make sure that none of that is masked out. Alright, let's select both of them so we can take a closer look. I'm gonna select my planet layer, go to my scale, and I'm just gonna scale this down a little bit. And the reason I'm doing that is because I think it would be interesting if there was a little space between the planet and the outer shell. I think that's gonna give us kind of an interesting look. And it's up to you, you know, if you want to make it kind of close. I'm just making a little space there. Very nice. So the next thing we want to do is let's have some fun. Let's grab our shell and let's go to our draw mode, grab our brush, or go to brush window, and let's press S on our keyboard, and then we can see something called snake hook. So I'm gonna grab snake hook, and it's asking me if I wanted to activate Sculptris Pro. I'm gonna say okay and turn that on. And now what that's gonna allow me to do is gonna allow me to pull a few fun shapes right out of this shell, and I can create, you know, changing the brush size. I can make them different size. And just randomly, I'm just gonna go around and pull some hooks out that look, it's kind of interesting. So I think this is gonna give us kind of a fun, stylized cartoon planet, and that's sort of what I'm looking for. So let's make sure, you know, as you spin around, make sure you kind of grabbed them on each side. All right. And so the next thing is, let's make sure that we don't have 127,000 points, right? If we want to make this into a game asset, we definitely want to keep this relatively low, right? Let's first take the outer shell, and let's go ahead and go to geometry, and let's go to Z remesher, and I'm going to leave everything as is and just simply say, now one thing I do want to point out, actually, if you turn on your polyframe, you will see that when we extracted our shell, our outer shell, zBrush, let me go to subtools and hide my planet for a minute. You can see that the inner part of the shell has different poly group than the outer one, and so do the edges. And this is going to be important for when we do our UVs. So let's make sure that we keep our poly groups as we continue to optimize this geometry. Okay, so in order to achieve this, if you go to the geometry and go to Z remesher, you want to make sure that keep groups is on, and that's going to allow you to maintain the poly groups, right? We really, again, we really need those. So the next step is, let's just say Z remesh, and let's keep an eye on our outer shell geometry, right? So I'm going to say Z remesh. All right, so this took me down to 6,000, and you can see what that looks like. If you wanted to have your topology to be even lower poly, of course, you can just say half and then do another Z remesh, but now it's not going to be exactly half, so it's not like it's going to give you 3,400, but it will lower it by a lot. So again, keep groups is on. I'm going to say half and do Z remesh. And you can see that it just went from 6,800 to 4,800, and I think this is low enough for to be used as a game asset. So let's do the same thing for the inner planet one as well. I'm just going to select this layer now, go to geometry. I don't need keep groups on this because it's just one poly group. And I need to dial this down a lot, so I'm going to say let's do 1, and we don't want adapt on either because we want the wireframe to be evenly distributed, right? So if we wanted to, we can even take the adaptive size down to 0. This way the wireframe is going to be completely evenly distributed. It's not going to bunch up, you know, to in any specific area to try to maintain its shape. That's what adaptive is. So I'm going to just simply say Z remesh and see what that gives me. Alright, really nice. So I got 800 faces. I think this is pretty great. Let's go to subtools and let's go ahead and go to merge, and let's do a merge down and say okay. So when we merge this down, you can see that now we just have one layer and we have all of our polygroups intact, which means we can go to our Z plugin, go to UV master, make sure that polygroups button is turned on, and just simply do unwrap. Once that's done, let's say flatten, and we can see what that looks like. So honestly, there's a lot of wasted space in here, right? So if we wanted to maybe increase the size of our planet, you could just go to move, do Control Shift and click, and move it this way. So what this will allow us to do is we can, for example, rotate it and maybe make it a little larger, and let's just do something like this. I'm gonna move this out of the way for a minute, and let's just reposition some of these as well. So Control Shift and click on this guy, and let me move them out of the way. Control Shift, click on this one, move them out of the way. So I just kind of want to do like a custom layout inside my UV space here in zBrush. If you hold on the Alt key, you can of course pan this around. If you hold on the Alt key and then drag and release, you can zoom in. So all of that is going to be useful. So let's just continue to lay them out a little bit better, right? So I'm going to do Control Shift and click on this. Let's just very quickly kind of make maybe a better layout with these. Alright, so I moved mine around a little bit. Obviously this is not the best layout in the world, and you can make some of these just a little bit larger and move them around even better. But for the sake of speed, I think this is going to work great for Substance Painter. So once you're done, Control Shift and drag to make sure that nothing is masked and it looks good and you're happy with your layout. Let's go ahead and do unflatten. Okay. And so now we have a few things, right? We modeled our shape. We have this optimized for game engine, so it's nice and low poly. And we did our UVs. So the next logical step is going to be taking this into Substance Painter. So let's go ahead and export this out as an FBX file. And I'm just going to override whatever I had here and just do a save. When the export options box comes up, just simply say OK, and I'm not going to change anything here and just say OK. Alright, let's move on to Substance Painter. Alright, so in Substance Painter, when you say File, New, you'll see this box. Let's go ahead and switch it to 2K. I'm going to make sure that Auto Unwrap is unchecked. I don't want this, because we just did our own custom UVs. We don't need this, right? And I am going to leave this on the same default template, which is PBR Metallic Roughness. And let's just select our file and just say Open. Alright, and you should see something similar to what I see on mine. Alright, very nice. So our next step should be, let's go ahead and create a bake. So I'm going to go to my texture set settings and do a bake. And again, I'm going to switch this to 2K. I'm going to use low poly mesh. Use low poly mesh as high poly mesh. I can switch my anti-aliasing to 4. And I'm just going to say bake. Alright, now we can return to painting mode and take a look. And let's see, let's spin this around and make sure that our baking looks nice and clean, and there's no strange, issues anywhere in the model. So if you're not seeing anything and everything looks pretty good, the next step would be to just simply applying some of these materials. So to do this, there's a couple things that I personally like to do. I'm going to delete the one that Substance Painter creates by default. I'm also going to go to display settings, and in here I would like to turn on anti-aliasing, just so my edges are nice and smooth. Another thing I could do is let's go ahead and maybe turn on the shadows, but make them relatively light. maybe somewhere around 15. And in the environment map, it's up to you. For now, I'm just going to select this glazed one. It's just a lighting that I personally like to do textures. And I'm going to turn off my display, and let's just talk about this. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to simply grab some of these pre-made materials that you can just download from Adobe Substance library, right, source library. So look for something called Alien Cracked Rock, and I'm going to use this, and the other one I'm going to use is called Asteroid Surface. So let me show you where those are. If you log into your Adobe Substance 3D portal, right, you can see that all of these are available to us. So if you just simply type in alien and press enter, right away you will see this Alien Cracked Rocky Ground that I have, and the other one, and there's many different ones to choose from. You're welcome to experiment and try different ones. This is the one I'll be using, and the other one that I had that I really liked was called Asteroid, and I believe it's this one here, Asteroid Surface. So you can grab them as well and simply import them into Substance Painter. Alright, and once you have them, let's just simply grab our asteroid surface and just simply drag it right into the layers. And once you do, you can see what that looks like. We can also take a look and see what it's actually doing. We can turn our normals on if we wanted to. Maybe that looks even better. We can hold down the shift key and right mouse button drag to change the lighting, which is really nice. We can also obviously change the color, so maybe we want to make ours a little dark and blue to give it more of a kind of volcanic look. Alright, so that's an option. Another thing we can do is let's grab the Alien Cracked Rock and drag it right above. Alright, and then I'm going to right click on it and do, I'm going to say add black mask. I'm going to grab this tool here called Polygon Fill, and then click on this button here called Mesh Fill, and just simply select my inner planet. Okay, and that's going to mask it out for me. I'm going to go back to my brush, and let's go ahead and select our Alien Cracked Rock material. And in here, there's a couple things we can do. We can turn on the height if we wanted to. Why not? We can also, there's a couple presets in here. So one that I personally like is Lava Glow. That's the one I would like to use in this example. So I think that looks really cool. You can also change the seed if you're not happy with something, maybe the way it's looking. For example, I just randomly selected it, and to me this looks like a letter A for some reason. I can do random, and I can change the seeding, and that's gonna change, the pattern, right? So you can do that a few times if you wanted to. Another thing you could do is under UV project, maybe instead of using UV projection, we can switch it to try, and that's going to give us a different result. So that's an option too. Very cool. Let's see, what else can we do? Let's turn on our emission so we can have this glowing, right? So it looks like it's glowing a little bit. So maybe we can change the contrast, intensity. Before we play with these, let's come here to texture set settings. Let's do let's add another channel, and let's add an emissive channel, right? As soon as we do, you can see that some of this has been activated, which means if you select your asteroid layer, you can see that emissive is turned off because this doesn't have any emissions. But if you turn on the other material, if you click on your Alien Cracked Rock material, you can see that emission channel has been added, and now it's sort of activated, but you can't really see anything in the viewport yet, right? Because it's not really being applied as far as the post-processing goes. So how do we turn this up so we can see maybe the glowing a little bit better? Well, for that we can go to our display settings, and we can turn on our activate post-processing effects. Let's turn those on. And under glare, let's go ahead and turn on glare on. And let's turn on vignette as well, just for fun, why not? Maybe do something like this. So for the glare, what I would like to do is I'm going to switch my shape to bloom, and let's pump these up a little if we wanted to. You can't really see much effect on it yet. That's because we want to go to into shader settings, and we want to turn up the emissive intensity just a little bit, so there's a little more for us to see visually, right? And let's go ahead and go back in here and see what else we can do. So we can now control the threshold and remap factor and just see how it's looking. Now another thing I can do is, let's go ahead and come to our parameters and maybe take a look at these. So we have a rock and we have a glow, right? So let's play with the glow. Instead of red, what else can we do? Let's try maybe yellow. So at this point I'm just playing around with different settings, and you just have to figure out what it is you like. So I kind of like a little interesting other colors in there, maybe a little purple, and that's just comes down to preference, but you can play around with different options. All right, so before we export this out into maybe Maya, let's take a look and see how would this look in iRay here in Substance Painter. So maybe one thing you want to do is save your project, and let's go ahead and click on iRay, this button here. We can also change the max time. Maybe let's change it to minutes, just so we have a little more samples. We can come here and maybe switch it to maybe we don't need the ground if it's a planet. We can also switch this to clear color, and let's maybe make it a little bit darker. We can change our environment to see how that looks on different lightings. We can also change the environment exposure. Maybe you wanted to make it a little darker, and we can change the environment rotation. From here, if you wanted to save a PNG file with a transparency, you can say save render, and then just simply say planet.png, for example. So if I say a PNG and I say save, you can see what that looks like. So this gave me the PNG file with perfect transparency, which now you can stick it you know, on any file with any background. But as our next step, let's go ahead and bring this into Maya. All right, so let's go ahead and export this out. So I'm gonna save my work, and I'm gonna say File, Export. I'm gonna make sure that PBR metallic roughness is selected. Let's go ahead and use PNGs. That's fine. For the size, it's up to you, but let's. I'm gonna select 2K maps. For definition, we can leave it on infinite, or let's go ahead and do default background color, and take a look. So this is gonna give us a base color, emission, height, metal, normal, and roughness. So that's fine. Let's go ahead and select our export folder. In here, I'm going to make a folder called textures and just say open and do export. And if I say open directory, it's going to give me a preview of what the files look like. All right. So let's go ahead and jump into Maya next and see if we can import our planet there as well. Okay, so file, import, let's import our planet. Alright, so here it is. We can always make it a little bit larger. Alright, so let's go ahead and apply our materials to this. So to apply our materials, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Substance Painter tab, which is right here. If you don't have a Substance plugin activated, you have to go to Windows, Settings, Plugin Manager, type in the word Substance, and just make sure that all of these are loaded. Once you do that, you should see something similar to mine where the Substance plugin is activated, which will give you these buttons here. And the one that we want is this workflow one, so I'm going to click on that. I'm going to leave it on Arnold and do select multiple maps. Navigate to your textures folder and select all of the maps and just say select, and then just simply say apply. Alright, next we can turn our textures on and we can turn our lights on, but before we do, let's go ahead and apply the materials that we just imported to this, right? So I'm going to select this, right click, go to existing, and just simply select AI standard surface 1, and that's the one that Maya gave me by default when it brought in all these materials. There you go. So that that looks really cool. Let's turn on our lights and let's bring in some kind of a Arnold light. So I'm going to set up a sky dome. I'm going to go to my color and in the attribute editor and just select an HDRI. I'm gonna go with something like this and say open, and you can see what that looks like. Alright, so one of the things we can do is let's turn off our lights so we don't need to maybe see them. And another thing we can do is let's click on our sky dome and let's increase the samples. We can also maybe change the intensity. We can always right click, go to material attributes, and if we wanted to, we can go to emission and take a look. So the emission map is plugged in, but it gave us a value of 1. If you wanted to make it a little more aggressive, maybe we can make it, you know, something like 5. So it's a little more interesting. And if we want to do a quick render and see what this looks like, I'm going to select my sky dome light and the outliner and turn my camera to off because I don't want my HDRI image rendering. I'm gonna go to Arnold settings. Let's do something low resolution, low res. So I'm gonna do 1K. Go to Arnold settings here. Let's maybe pump these up just a little bit, and let's go to imagers and let's do a lens flare and give us a little glowing. And let's do let's add a couple denoisers as well. So I'm just gonna add these, and let's do a quick render and see how it's looking. All right, so once you dial up your settings, you should have something similar to this. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.